Shalom WJC family and happy Purim. Today is Purim Friday. We're celebrating Purim. It is also, of course, Erev Shabbat. And tomorrow in shul and synagogue, we will be reading Parshat Tetzave. And I was thinking when reading Tetzave and celebrating Purim about an interesting phenomenon that happened for me, and I know for many other people, a year ago when this pandemic started. It's hard to believe that it has been a year. In some ways, it seems like a lot longer, and in some ways, I can't believe that Purim was a whole year ago. Time has gotten very strange. We know our perceptions of time has gotten very strange in the pandemic. But 1 year ago, when the first lockdown came, we closed up the shul, and I was working from home. And for the first several weeks, until we got sort of into Zoom, I wasn't really getting dressed. I wasn't putting on a button-down shirt. I wasn't putting on a jacket. And then even though something didn't feel right. And so even though I was home by myself, I still put on my work clothes. And even on days I wasn't Zooming. And yes, I even wear pants, right? When I'm recording and Zooming. Even a virtual rabbi wears pants. Why? Well, I think there's some hint to that, both in the holiday of Purim and its custom of costuming, and in Parshat Tetzave, which is very much about the uniform that the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, would wear in the tabernacle, right? Last week in Parshat Truma, we explored all about the design of this incredibly intricate tent that would become the portable sanctuary in the desert. Now this week we read about the intricate design of the uniform of the functionaries in that tabernacle. And it goes into such great fine detail. The question is why? The Kohen Gadol would wear several intricately woven pieces of fine linen garments, a tunic and an ephod, sort of an apron and a breastplate. And I want to focus in particular on the ephod, which had two straps that would hold this apron-like skirt up. And on those two straps were two black jewels, black gems, each with 6 names of the tribes of Israel on those straps. And then he would wear this beautiful, intricate breastplate with 12 gems, each one representing a tribe of the Jewish people. So the question is, why this fancy garb? Right? Does God need to see the Kohen in all the fanciful garb? Do the people need to see the Kohen in the fancy garb? Maybe. And a uniform, like any costume, sends a message. So maybe this symbolizes the unity of all the of all the tribes of Judaism, of the Jewish people, as they come before God, right? All together on the breastplate, all together on the straps of the ephod. So maybe it sends that message to the Jewish people. Maybe it sends that message to God that this person is a functionary of the Jewish people. And maybe it's sending the message to Aaron himself or the Kohen Gadol himself. And I want to explore that idea in particular. The idea that in some ways the clothes do make the person because of how we perceive ourselves. So on Purim we put on costumes. The question is why. So it's a mitzvah to be sameach, to be happy on Purim. In fact, the whole month of Adar. There's a lot of beautiful reasons why we dress up for the Purim holiday. But one of them is it's fun. Like, it's just silly. When we see ourselves in costume, we act a little differently. Sometimes costumes are freeing. Sometimes costumes just lift our mood, right? But costumery itself helps us step outside ourselves. Why? Because a costume changes our mental state, changes the way we perceive ourselves. And so too, Aaron, dressing up in these very fancy clothes. Remember, Aaron, the high priest, he's had his missteps. He was involved in the golden calf catastrophe, or he will be. It's as Moses is getting these commandments in Tetzave, the golden calf is happening almost concurrently, which is pretty wild to think about. It's like a split screen of the action here. Moses up on the mountain getting these mitzvot, and Aaron and the people making the golden calf down in the wilderness of Sinai below the mountain. But so Aaron's a flawed person. Every person is a flawed person, but putting on these garbs will remind him he represents the breastplate and the onyxes, the gems on the ephod will remind him that he represents more than himself, that he is just a person, but in this function, he represents all the Jewish people. The message would be sent back to him to make him feel differently. And so too, when I put on clothes, even when I was working from home, when I put on work clothes instead of play clothes, they help me remember who I am, right? That I had a congregation that I needed to be rabbi for. I'm a rabbi, whether or not I have a jacket on, but something about putting on that jacket helped remind me, despite what was going on in the world. And it was pretty wild, if you remember, at that time. Even so, I was able to focus because my uniform, my costume, my outfit helped me remember that I had a different role to play. Which brings me back to the costumes for Purim. And I want to highlight something I wrote about in our review, which was that one of the reasons that we wear a costume is that on Purim, the poor come for gifts. Matanot le'evyonim is one of the mitzvot of Purim. And so we all put on masks so that no one needs to know who's taking and who's giving. That the costume can actually be freeing and dignifying. I know a lot of the costumes, probably including mine, that will be worn for Purim, that are being worn for Purim, are not the most dignified. Fine. Every costume, every uniform has its own purpose. Right? However, the high priest's costume, the high priest's uniform, reminded him also that this was not a powerful position per se. It was a representative position, that he had a responsibility and therefore needed to act in a certain way. And we have that power also. Not only can the clothes we wear inspire us to our jobs, to our roles, to our leadership, whatever it might be, but sometimes they remind us, right, to have compassion, to be generous, like the Purim masks for the Matanot le'evyonim. And here we are a year into this pandemic, and I think that message is so important, right? That while we may have felt very concerned, I'll use the word, self-concerned during this pandemic for good reasons, to help our children, our family, our parents. So many of us have worried about our parents in ways we have not up until this point had to worry because our parents were okay. But now we're all dealing with something new, right? How many children have been making appointments for their parents for vaccinations because their parents, adult children, their even more adult parents can't navigate the system or are having difficulty navigating the system. Maybe this Purim, if last Purim we were putting on the uniform of a people going through a crisis, of people going through something we never understood before, here we are a year later. Maybe it's a good reminder to put on the costume of the generous one, to put on the compassionate costume, to put on our mask in order to help the dignity of others. As much in need as so many of us are, there's always someone in greater need. Or maybe you are that person in great need, in which case I hope you'll reach out to me, to those who can support you and help you through this very difficult time. A year is a long time. The year since last Purim, the year since last Adar, it has been, in our lifetimes, unprecedented. We were forced to put on uniforms we never had before, right? Face masks, hand sanitizer, concern about how close we were to each other. Now it's time. We still need to wear all those things. That's still our uniform. But to add to that outward focus, to wear our our best self uniform, our compassionate uniform, and to be able to help others, so many in so much need right now. This Purim, Matanot le'Evyonim, gifts to the poor, Mishloach Manos, sending baskets, sending regards to friends, those that building community, that reconnecting after a year that was so isolating, that is what I think will bring us as much joy as anything else. I wish you all a happy Purim. I hope we're all able to put on the clothes, the spiritual clothes and the real clothes that will help us get to that next step of helping others. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and again, Purim Sameach.